Welcome, and thank you for taking a few minutes to learn more about the Refugee Resettlement Program within the Diocese of Erie. A question that is asked quite often is, why does the Catholic Diocese of Erie even do refugee resettlement? Our answer is rooted in the mission statement of the Erie Diocese. Our diocesan mission statement speaks to our commitment to living the gospel values, quote, in communion with the universal church, end quote. When we resettle refugees in Erie, we're not only participating in the efforts of the universal church to care for the poorest and neediest among us, but we are beneficiaries ourselves. We offer our hospitality and generosity to those in need, and in return, we gain insight into new cultures, new ways of seeing the world, and perhaps most importantly, insight into the indomitable spirit of humankind to persevere and thrive, even in the face of the world's worst atrocities. We would be remiss if we did not take a moment to recognize the man who embodies refugee resettlement in our diocese. Father John Santor has devoted much of the past 40 years to working with hundreds of refugees in our diocese. We are certainly thankful for the many volunteers who give of their time and talents to help our program, but Father John is in a class by himself, and so we take this moment to thank you, Father John, for all you've done for the refugees. It's very important to take a minute to look at the U.S. vetting or screening process for refugees. Let me say up front, there is no such thing as an unvetted refugee coming to the United States. As you can see from this screen, it is a very lengthy and time-consuming process, generally taking somewhere between 18 and 24 months or longer for a refugee to make it to the United States. As you look through this list, you can see there's multiple steps and processes that individuals go through, including personal interviews, one-on-one, where they sit down with someone from the United States and give their personal history, multiple background checks, biometric scans where they're checking fingerprints, optic scans, and checking them against databases throughout the world. It's important to look at the list to the right of the U.S. agencies that are involved in the screening and vetting process. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Department of Defense, the FBI and CIA, the Counterterrorism Task Force, and even the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol are all part of this process of screening, vetting, interviewing, and reciprocating the process over and over again to make sure if at any point in the process a question or a concern comes up, the person either is dropped from the system altogether and denied, or they're taken back to an earlier point and walk through the process. So the screening process is very extensive and very time consuming. Can it be better? Of course, and I don't think anyone would argue that it's in our interest and it's correct to slow it down and make sure it's done right. But to say that they're unvetted is just not true. This is a picture of Erie International Airport. This is where we meet the refugees when they come to Erie. In a sense, this is the new Ellis Island. The refugees arrive with 2 bags of all their earthly possessions. We greet them here and we take them to their first apartment in Erie. It is the expectation of the U.S. Department of State that when refugees arrive, we have an apartment already set up for them and ready to go. As you can see from this picture, the apartments that we secure for our new arrivals have to be clean, well kept, furnished, and most of the stuff you see in this apartment here has been donated by generous people like yourselves who give to us so that we can help the refugees out. It's important that we furnish an entire apartment, so not only living room furniture, but kitchen tables, kitchen chairs, bedrooms, appliances either have to be provided by the landlord or we have to find a way to get them. And so we often use secondhand appliances that are in good working order in order to stock the apartment for the new folks. One of the hardest things we have to find is kitchen chairs. So if you have kitchen chairs or you know of someone with kitchen chairs, we'd be more than happy to accept those as donations if you're so inclined. Another expectation is that we supply somewhere between 3 to 5 days worth of food for the newly arriving refugees. Not only must we supply food, but we must make sure that it's culturally appropriate. So we can't be given pork to people who that is against their religious or personal beliefs. and we need to make sure that there's enough depending on the size of the family. When we say we have to furnish an apartment, we're talking all aspects of the apartment, including the bathroom. So we furnish things like bathroom rugs, drapes or coverings for the windows, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, all the things that a person needs to be able to live successfully in an apartment. The only household item that we consistently purchase is beds. Due to the recent bed bug outbreak in Erie, we have stopped receiving mattresses from people in order to make sure that we are, for the sake of our refugees and for the landlords, that we're purchasing beds that we know are clean of bed bugs. But as you can see, they're very modest, and we're able to purchase them at a low price in order to give people a safe and healthy place to sleep. When our new refugees arrive, we have to complete a safety checklist of all the apartments we secure for them. We need to review them and make sure that they meet 3 essential areas of conformability. They have to be affordable. Can the refugee, once they get a job, can they afford this apartment? Safety. Is the home safe inside? Are there no bare wires? Are there no concerns with windows, doors that won't lock, windows that aren't secured? And also the neighborhood. Is it a neighborhood that will be safe for our refugees, to make sure they'll be okay? And finally, it has to be clean and rodent or infestation free. So we can't have homes that have cockroaches or mice or any other kind of adversity like that. Our theory is if we wouldn't put our own family member in an apartment, we're not going to put a refugee there either. There are certain expectations put upon us of what we have to supply for every refugee or every refugee family coming in. And so as you can see here, there's things like we have to provide a couch, chairs, end tables, lamps, dressers, kitchen tables and chairs. We have to provide silverware, plates, cups, cooking utensils, pots and pans and mixing bowls. We have to provide sheets and blankets, pillows and pillowcases, towels. These are all things that we ask people to donate for us, and if we're unable to do that, then we sometimes have to go out and purchase it in order to have it for the people when they first arrive. Examples of other things we have to provide would include cleaning supplies, soap, shampoo, bathroom cleaner, laundry detergent, waste baskets, mops, brooms, vacuum cleaners, and as I said, the toiletries, all the things for the bathroom the person needs. We need to provide culturally appropriate food, and most importantly, for some of our cultures, we have to provide seasonally appropriate clothing. There's a number of times that we receive refugees who come off the plane in sandals or flip-flops, and no winter coat or no coat at all, and we have to be ready to provide that for them. We're very fortunate to have a relationship with St. Stanislaus Parish, in which we're able to rent some of the rooms in their former school. Here's an example of one of the rooms that we use. This is our clothing room. This is where we go to find seasonally appropriate clothes for our new refugees coming in. Here's a picture of one of our supply rooms where we keep the small household items, the plates, the dishes, the cups. These are all things that we have to have on hand, ready to go whenever new arrivals are coming in. But probably the most used classroom that we utilize at St. Stan's is our orientation classroom. As you can see here, we can fit a number of people in here, and this is where we hold the classes to help people become acculturated to what to expect in their new life in Erie. The orientation classes we hold take place 4 days a week, and every refugee is required to attend 4 weeks of classes in which we cover a wide variety of topics. Probably the most important of which include health and hygiene. What does it mean to take care of yourself? When and how do you use deodorant? How do you make sure you don't wear too much cologne to overpower people? Very important part of the whole refugee resettlement process is understanding employment, what they need to do to get a job, how they can prepare themselves, and what employers are looking for, with the understanding that the expectation is they are economically self-sufficient within the first 8 months after arrival. We talk about education, where the adults need to go to become educated or to improve their education, especially English as a second language courses. and children, how to get the children enrolled in the Erie School District or any of the other schools that they might choose to attend. We talk about housing, how to be a good renter, how to keep what that involves, how to pay their rent, all those kinds of things. We talk about safety, fire safety, how to avoid fires or what to do in the case of a fire. We talk about personal safety, how to keep themselves safe within their home and in the community at large. We talk about Pennsylvania laws and the United States laws, including the understanding, the expectation that all men 18 to 25 must register for the selective service and can be subjected to the draft at any point in time. We talk about their travel loans that they signed. Every refugee who comes to the United States signs a promissory note that they will repay the federal government for the cost of their flight coming over. We talk about budgeting and finance. We teach them how to use a bank, how the U.S. banking system works and how to use it. And finally, we talk about cultural adjustment, how to relate to life in Erie, Pennsylvania. From where is the library, where are the grocery stores, the laundromats, to where are parks and recreation that they can take their kids to have fun. So who is coming to Erie, Pennsylvania? Well, here's a chart that gives you a quick snapshot in the last 5 years of who we resettled. As you can see, the overwhelming population has been the Nepali Bhutanese, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. The second largest group has been the Somalians. The third group is Iraqis. And it's important to understand that many of the Iraqis that are resettled in the United States are people who had to flee Iraq because they were helping either the U.S. military or the U.S. contractors that were working in that country to rebuild it after the war. If they stayed in that country, there's a very high likelihood that they would have been shot or killed as a result of their cooperation with U.S. forces or U.S. corporations. Syrians you hear a lot of. At this point in time, we have only resettled 121. That number was expected to rise, but obviously is on hold now with the new executive order. So how does one become a refugee? What does that mean, or what's the process, and why does that happen? Well, let's take an example of our largest group, the Bhutanese. You can see here that Bhutan is the country in red, sort of in the middle of the screen. The people that are coming here, the Nepali Bhutanese, lived in the bottom half to third of the country. They are by ancestry of Nepali descent, but had lived in Bhutan for centuries. The Bhutanese king decided he only wanted pure Bhutanese in his country, and so anyone of Nepali descent had to get out. Nepal agreed to allow them into the country, but would not let them assimilate and live as regular citizens, so they were forced into refugee camps. Here's a picture to show you what Bhutan looks like. As you can see, it's a very beautiful and idyllic country. A lot of times people will say, why don't these refugees just go back to their country? Well, many of them would love to go back. Compare the picture I just showed you of Bhutan with this, the Nepali refugee camp. As you can see, the huts are very close together. There's no running water. There's no electricity. The people are forced to cook with open flame, and as you can see from the picture here, one open flame that gets out of control can wipe out an entire refugee village, which leaves the residents living in makeshift tent cities in order to survive. Another concern that people have is that refugees are an economic drain on our system, particularly on our welfare system. So here's a chart from the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services, showing the degree to which refugees utilize welfare programs. The first chart, you can see medical assistance. That's the health insurance part of welfare. And of all the Pennsylvania residents using or accessing the medical assistance program, just a little more than half of 1% are refugees. 0.59% are refugees. TANF cash is the actual cash payment to Pennsylvania residents, and of that percentage, just a little less than 1% are refugees who are accessing the TANF cash system. And the SNAP program, the third graph on the right, SNAP is the food stamp program. Of all Pennsylvania residents utilizing the food stamp program, again, just a little less than 1% are refugees. Another statistical fact from the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services, TANF clients, and again, TANF is the actual cash payment part of welfare. Of all of TANF clients in Pennsylvania, they spend an average of 9.17 days, or about 2.5 years, on the system. Refugee TANF clients spend an average of 216 days, or just a little over 7 months, about 7.5 months on TANF cash. So far less than the average Pennsylvania citizen. An important question that we ask ourselves all the time, and I think is a fair question to ask, is are refugees a net asset or a net liability to the Erie area, to the Erie Diocese? One statistic we look at is the Erie population. The only growing demographic in Erie is the refugee population. The Erie population dipped below 100,000 for the first time in decades, and we are still arguing the fact that we believe it's over 100,000 because of the number of refugees that have moved into our city. Another fact to look at is the number of new business startups that have been begun by refugees that again are an important part of the Erie economy. The employers that we work with are extremely pleased with the refugees, and the refugees will often take jobs that no one else will take. The Erie School District is who we work with the most for schooling for the kids. They report minimal problems. Obviously, language is a problem that we all have to work through, but once we get through that, behaviorally, our refugee kids that are generally not a problem, and academically they do very well for the most part. Finally, refugees are adding to the economic engine of Erie. They're purchasing homes, they're buying cars, they're buying appliances. From the statistical data we have gathered, the refugees that are coming to Erie have definitely been a net asset. But at the end of the day, for us, the question of why do we resettle refugees in Erie comes down to Matthew 25. Whatsoever you do for the least of my people, that you do unto me. For I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me drink, a stranger and you welcomed me. It is our job and our duty as Catholics, as Christians, as human beings in this world to reach out to those less fortunate than ourselves and help them. That's our goal with our refugee resettlement program. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at jhaas, Haas, @ccc.org, or you can give me a call at area code 814-456-2091. Thank you for listening.